The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this virtual roundtable on March 15th, 2018. Today, our guest is Patrick Meuleman from the Northwest Trade Adjustment Assistance Center.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
He will be discussing his program and taking any questions you might have. When you have your questions, please type them in as they come up, and he will get to them either as he's going or towards the end. And as always, this is recorded, so if you want to access it later or share it with anyone, just let us know, and we can make sure you get that recording. And with that, I will hand it over to Patrick.
Thank you so much. Let's see here. Am I just?
Yep. However you want to do it.
All right. Oh, there we go. Well, thank you all for coming on today. As Amanda mentioned, I'm here to talk about the Trade Adjustment Assistance for Firms program. And what we are is a federal funding assistance program designed to assist companies that have been hurt by trade or import impacts specifically. Many of you may know about the Trade Act or Trade Adjustment Assistance for Workers program. So when a large employer lays off a bunch of people, they are sometimes eligible for benefits, retraining benefits, things like that. We are the sister program of that, designed to help the company survive, become more competitive, etc. So our program is run by the U.S. Department of Commerce, and specifically the U.S. Economic Development Administration. By way of clarification, I am not a member of the U.S. Economic Development Administration. Our organization is a nonprofit. We contract with EDA to run this for the Northwest. So we cover Idaho, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. See, that's not all showing up, is it?
No.
Okay. So let me just jump in here. We call ourselves a federal grant for Made in America companies, and none of that is really official nor technically accurate. We are not a grant program, okay? So we don't take in a bunch of applications and then pick and choose between the ones we think are most deserving or eligible. What we are is a federal program. So there is a specific set of criteria that a company has to demonstrate, and if they demonstrate those, they are eligible for the program. And my other job, besides doing client development outreach, is I'm the one who gets to do the application for the company. That is cost-free, so when a company calls and says, hey, I'm interested, what is it that you guys do? I walk them through kind of 30 minutes. Here's our program. Here are the benefits. Here's why you'd want to do it. And here's the criteria. And then I pull together their application and submit it to EDA. So that's kind of a unique thing that, you know, typically grants, you guys have to do them yourselves. I'm here to help ensure that the company is eligible, saving them time if they're not, and then knowing, right, the criteria. Eligible firms can receive up to $75,000 in matching funds. That's the other part of this. This isn't a grant because the money doesn't go to the company. Okay, what we do is, on the next line, we help them hire technical assistants, what we call consultants. So they can't purchase equipment, they have to go out and hire somebody. Many of you probably are aware of the organization Idaho Tech Health, for example. They are manufacturing, quote unquote, consultants. They will come into a company and do lean manufacturing or product development, things like that. That is the kind of organization we would help a firm hire. So we would identify what kind of projects would help them become more competitive, what might help them develop new sales, more efficiencies, and then we would contract directly with someone like Tech Help or a web developer and help them fund the projects that way. The reason we do it that way is, one, that keeps us from being a subsidy, and this keeps us WTO compliant. So it's a little bit of a strange deal because, again, we're not a grant, we're not giving them money, but we are essentially discounting their assistance. We cover mostly manufacturing companies. Okay, that's kind of how the program was formed, was to help manufacturers. We have since expanded into food production, agriculture, fisheries, and some service firms. That we have had less luck with service firms. It's a little harder to prove import competition. And as I mentioned, we cover Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. We used to have Montana, but passed that off to the Denver, our Denver sister office. Eligibility. So what are we looking for? It's similar to the NWTAAC program. We need to show that a firm is in some kind of distress or that there's been an actual impact. Okay, so we're not looking for, hey, I'm looking to get into this industry, but I know there's already a heavy presence of imports. I'm kind of already impacted. It's not a barrier to entry. It's more, are you already in business and impacted? So a firm has to be in business and have sales for 2 years. And the next two are very straightforward. I need to show that over a generally 2-year period, sales and employment have declined. I'm not looking for a massive decline. I don't want a firm to be down 50% before I talk to them, but there does need to be a decline. So layoffs are generally the first indicator that we would be someone to talk to. And then the linchpin of our program is import competition. How can we show that part of those sales losses are because of import competition? The way we do that is we get to go talk to a few of their customers, and that's usually where a lot of companies are like, "What? I don't know about that." It's very non-invasive. We generally do it. I prepare a statement and have their customer send it back to me, basically saying, yeah, we reduced our purchases from X company because we're buying some import products. That's about all their customers have to do, but that's really the best way that EDA has shown that we can say, yeah, this company is losing customers because of import competition. As I mentioned, we, meaning I, complete their application for the company. It doesn't cost them anything. At that point, they could get through the program, be approved, and stop and say, we don't want to go any further for some reason. The company will have spent $0. I would also like to mention, it's not an excessive amount of information I collect. It's generally things they should have, which is profit and loss statements, balance sheets, company information, which shouldn't take them more than 10 minutes if they know their company. And then the customer part of it is really where sometimes it takes them some time to find someone who's willing to sign off or talk to me. But I can get these applications done in about a week if the company is on top of things. If they're not, it can take a little bit longer. After we get a company into our program, that's the application phase, we do a strategic plan. This is where we basically put in all the projects that they want us to help them fund. That is about half projects and half company evaluation, SWOT analysis, things like that. But this is really where it starts becoming fun and real for the company, because they can look at what kind of projects would they want to do over a 5-year period, put them into the strategic plan, and then we move on to implementation. I put on there 4 to 6 months. 4 months is if I can get the company to move fairly quickly on the application phase, and that's building in probably a 2 to 3 week time frame. 6 months is if they're taking a couple months to get me the information I need. But the nice thing about our program is I'm there for the application phase. My director is there for the strategic plan phase. And then we have a contract administrator who works with the firm and whoever the consultant's going to be to implement projects and make sure that everything is fully funded. The strategic plan is basically, it's an analysis of competition. It's a review of the company. And this is where companies get to say what they want to do. We don't come in and say, these are the projects that will make your company better. It is highly company driven. My director's been doing this for, I think, 30 years, so he's seen a lot of different types of firms. He may come into a machine shop and say, I know you guys want to do all these kind of things. You might also want to consider doing some, lean training. Like, it's kind of a mess around here. But we don't come in and tell anybody what they're going to do, and we don't tell them who they're going to use. So if a marketing firm sends us a referral and says, this company might be eligible, and that company decides not to do any kind of marketing projects or whatever, that's not our business. We're here to help the firm, and pretty much only the firm. Some project ideas. We overwhelmingly do marketing projects, and I think the reason for that is we largely help smaller companies. We like our sweet spot is probably 15 million in annual sales and under, but we help a lot of companies that are in the 800,000 a year in sales and under. These are people who have a few employees, let one go, they're eligible, and they're good at what they make. I see you don't have a presentation. Okay, Nan, let's see this.
Is that better? Yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
Sorry, everyone. This is still recorded with the screen fully showing.
Perfect. Okay, so like I was saying, we largely deal with small manufacturers. So these are people who are good at what they make right now, but they don't necessarily have marketing backgrounds, don't have the money to bring on marketing people. That's usually what we hear is, I talked to a company yesterday in Oregon, and it was a winery, and he said, if we could hire someone to go do Costco shows for us on the weekends as a contract salesperson, basically, that would make a huge difference. So it's a big expense to bring on somebody like that, but if we can come in and help with a web development upgrade, right, or do market research, they want to expand into a new market, for example, not a bad idea to get 50% off on hiring some market research done. Outside of that, we do a lot of manufacturing efficiencies, process control, quality control certifications, IT system. Basically, it's anything that you hire out, we can generally help pay for. IT systems are interesting to me because if a company just wants to go buy QuickBooks off the shelf, we can't do it, but basically anything else we can. We helped a lumber mill in Idaho, or lumber company. They had a lumber and a logging side, and they didn't have a system to talk to each other on inventory control. So we helped them fund that, and that's not a cheap thing to do, and we were able to pay for half of it. So that was a big help to them. Quality control certifications, a lot of machine shops looking to get in as subcontractors, and we deal with Washington. So a lot of those want to get in with Boeing, for example. They all of a sudden need to get, certifications, whether it's ISO or AR or AS. If you're going to be a subcontractor and all of a sudden they're requiring you to get a quality control certification, that's time consuming, but it's also expensive, and we can help pay for some of that. There we go. So implementation, as I mentioned, we have a contract administrator who works with the companies once they are approved and ready to start spending. One of the things that we have seen in the past is companies will get started on projects before we're allowed to start paying. And we beg and plead them to listen to us. Sometimes they don't and get started on things. We cannot fund projects until their strategic plan has been approved. And I make this very clear to companies. My director makes it very clear. Generally, we don't have a problem, but when it is a problem, it's a bad deal. So her job is to make sure that everyone's contracts are signed properly, that the consultant is doing work to the company's satisfaction. So what I really like about this program is a company can get in, participate, and still, you know, not worry so much about what the criteria for eligibility are, or they don't have to work through any kind of government contracts to make sure that they can, you know, that they're eligible for reimbursement or something. That is our job. We handle eligibility, we handle the contracts. They just have to worry about getting us information and doing projects. The firm will have 5 years to complete their projects once they're approved, and that has now become a firm deadline. We used to have companies that would kind of linger on for 10 to 12 years and not really do much, and they were kind of eating up a lot of our obligated funding. So that's now a firm deadline. Generally speaking, if a company is interested and active, that is not a problem. Most of the time, within 3 years, they use up their funds, do some projects that build on each other. And we like to see them start a project within the first 6 months. And that's a quick overview. I didn't want to get into really a lot of the eligibility stuff. It's really what we're looking for is companies that are either out there, frankly, complaining about import competition, but mainly it's layoffs. I can tell you, as a federal program in this part of the country, a lot of times, especially when I'm out kind of cold calling or talking to companies, they see federal government, they don't really want to share much information with us, and I completely understand that. When I came on board, my then boss was kind of like, well, we cold call around here. And I said, that doesn't go well for you, does it? And he said, no. So really reaching out to economic development professionals who know these companies better. You're there. You know, our main office is in Seattle. I'm in Boise. We cover a pretty big territory. It's not really effective for me to just call people and say, I'm with the Fed, send me your income statements. It's not a good way to do it. I'm also very aware that it doesn't matter who you are. Companies don't really like to tell you, not necessarily the truth, but, you know, if they're laying people off, that's not something anybody's very happy about. So, you know, we can't always get to people, and that's unfortunate, or we'll get to them too late. But, you know, if you hear about somebody who's laying people off, odds are they're in an industry that has some kind of import competition. Anymore, it's a lot of the shackles have been taken off us in order to get companies in, kind of like adding the firms or the service firms. It's hard to do, but we have helped some service firms. We helped a software developer, for example, and that was a surprise, but he lost some customers to Indian outsourcing. So it's the employment piece is the key. That's the one I have the least amount of flexibility on. But if you do come across any firms in your area that are laying off even one or two at some of these smaller firms, that's generally enough for us to come in and help.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, shoot.
Is it competitive, or how competitive is it? Does every company who applies?
Every company who applies and meets the metrics is in. So the first things I do is I get income statements and I get their quarterly unemployment tax reports, which just through the state, it shows how many employees they had each month. I run the numbers, and if they're eligible, we move forward. If they're not, we stop. Okay, and that's one of the biggest things I do here is I can save companies time, because they're not going to complete an application and not get the benefit.
Is there a match requirement?
So the match is not to us. It's what they're doing is when they hire, say, an Idaho Tech Help to come in and do lean manufacturing training. A firm that was eligible for the full amount of $75,000 has a 50-50 match. So say they do a $50,000 project with Tech Help, they write a contract for $25,000. We write a contract for $25,000. So our money, CFOs especially love this, because our money never touches their books. They don't have to account for it. There's no, accounting
Right, there's no like
slots. There's nothing. Basically, they're just doing what they usually would. It's just they get a discount on what they're hiring, not buying, but hiring.
So is there, can companies apply at any time?
Yes, there is no deadline. EDA requires us to use a recent month. What that means is from whatever month ending we use, I have 4 months to finish an application. So right now we are still in March. If a company came to me, I could look at their December ending sales and employment and still have time to get an application done. If I talk to a company in September, I will be creating kind of, I guess I would call it fiscal years for say June or July. So another part that I run into a lot with companies is if I talk to them in September, they'll be thinking about their last fiscal year, which may have been December ending, right? And so they'll say, well, no, our sales were up the last couple of years. Whereas if you look at it in the middle of the year, it's not. And frankly, that's why I don't like to get into a lot of the eligibility percentages and figures, because people don't look at their sales and employment numbers like we do. And that's something we fight through with EDA every day. Is they think that everyone reports their sales figures, their export figures, et cetera, the way they want them to. So I get to act as a liaison or chief arguer with EDA on behalf of the company. But again, that's a nice thing for a firm applying. They don't have to deal with arguing about why they should be allowed in or not. That's my job. So it's pretty much when they're eligible, they can move forward.
Okay. I have one question. When you mentioned that if they start the project before the application is approved, and then you can't fund it, do you not fund that portion that they've already funded, or it means
correct?
The whole project is
we can do that. So let's just assume somebody starts a website project, right? It's like 3 parts and it's going to cost whatever, $50,000. If the first part they start before they're approved, and that's $10,000, we cannot help fund that.
Okay.
If the web developer is willing to stop the contract that they had there, do the new one with us, we can pay for the remaining $40,000 going forward.
Okay.
On the split basis.
The 50-50.
Right.
Yep.
And for smaller companies, so if a company does about $1 million or under a year in sales, they aren't eligible for as much money. So they would be eligible for $30,000 in projects funded, but we cover 75%.
Oh.
So smaller company, they don't, again, their sales are already down. They don't have the cash flow to be out there dropping $75,000 in a couple years. So they come to the table with $7,500, and we cover $22,500 for projects. So it's a better split, just not as much work can be done.
Okay.
But yeah, we certainly, sometimes we come across people who are just like, well, no, I don't want to have to deal with multiple organizations to do a web project. And that sucks. We'll help the company find someone who will. But yeah, generally like I said, we tell them several times, don't start anything unless you have to, and then we'll get it moving as fast as possible and pay for what we can.
Okay. How many businesses do you qualify per year?
Our budget's been shrinking a little bit since we're federally funded. We had a big rush of companies back in about 2011, 2012. We got, I think, 22 companies in, and that really lopsided us. So we ran out of money for a few years, and then we had a backlog of companies that didn't get in. So I generally shoot for in the neighborhood of 12 to 15.
Okay.
If we get a lot more than that, that basically means we can't pay out the full benefit to the companies that we have. Now, we've had firms that have gotten into our program and spent $0. And I don't know why you would go through the process of getting into a program and then not doing anything.
Right.
But they do, right? And sometimes companies come in and use all their money in 6 months. So 12 to 16. What that means in terms of proportionment is I usually shoot for 1 a year, maybe from Alaska, 1 to 2 from Idaho. Oregon and Washington take up the rest, and just because of the number of companies, and frankly, like I was talking about, you get over to Seattle and Portland area, people are more willing to do things like this. I was talking to a company yesterday. Randy Schroll sent them to me, I think, last June. And I finally, around December, got some kind of response saying, yeah, I think we are eligible, but this, we're not going to take handouts kind of a thing. And I'm like, no, I get it, but somebody is. So, the genesis of this program is our government goes out and does trade agreements, and consumers love it because they get a lot of choice. But all of a sudden, your customers are looking at what you sell versus what they can buy coming out of China for a tenth of the price. You're going to lose some business. Now, we are a way, leaving the politics out of it, we're not an impediment to imports, right? We are a remedy. We are not an impediment. We don't seek to block any trade. We're just we recognize that it does have some impacts, both good and bad, and we're trying to help those that have lost customers. So, but, on some of our sister offices on the East Coast, they have so many companies that their benefits usually capped at about 10,000 per firm. We're still giving full amounts because we have a lot less interest. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But
so do you need help recruiting businesses that would qualify?
Generally, yeah. I mean, in Idaho, we don't do as well. Again, if I'm saying 1 to 2, if I can get 2 from Idaho in a year, that's a good year. We've started doing postcard mailers that are having a lot better impact. But if I do those, generally I'll get, 20 companies from Washington each time interested. And in Idaho, you get 1 or 2, right? And, my job is, when people call, I help them, right? And I mean, I'm out there actively trying to find companies, but it's also tax dollars. I'm not just going to go run around the state and play and be like, oh, so.
How do they learn about the program, like businesses?
It depends, right? Through virtual roundtables, through. I used to do a lot more of them, but just email outreach. I used to do some trips, and that just didn't. Trade shows have never been good. Generally speaking, it's been through kind of direct mailings. We're in a weird place, right? Because again, it's federally funded. We've had some issues with shutdowns. Right. So if the government shuts down and all of a sudden they're like, hey, you guys can't do outreach for 3 months, what do you do? But we also can't go out and bring in 50 companies because we don't have the funding for it. So we're always kind of on a line where, if I could get 3 companies a year from Idaho just consistently, that would be great. If I could get probably 1 to 2 from Alaska, that would be great. Realistic, when numbers drop, we go where the easy low-hanging fruit is, and that's Western Washington, Western Oregon, because there's a lot of firms there. But again, I work with like the MEPs, the Manufacturing Extension Partnerships, right? Because they're the ones who can do the work. It's a lot easier for me to go explain to them, hey, you send me a company, they're probably going to do the work with you. So some of that. And then my director, he is on the road quite a bit, but it's mostly over in Oregon and Washington. So he goes around and does things like these or talk to congressional offices, things like that. But yeah, it's any companies that they come to us. My job is to explain it to them, let them know that they're eligible as quick as I can. And if they are, great. If not, try not to waste anybody's time.
Cool.
I don't know how many other questions.
Any other
I don't
questions?
see any up here.
Okay. Well, if you do have any follow-up questions, I mean, again, it's a niche program, right? I mean, we're not casting a wide net to get, hundreds of programs or companies even into our program. I mean, it's small. I think our funding now annually for the whole country is something like 12.5 million.
Wow.
Okay, and that's to cover 11 centers. So, again, it's small. I think what's effective about our program is we are targeting smaller business, right? I go out and I look at a lot of programs, and I kind of like to say, a lot of these federal programs like to help small business, but not too small.
Mm-hmm.
If we've got a company that does 300,000 a year in sales and 3 people and they lose one of them, we can generally help, and that's pretty good.
Yeah, have a big impact on that.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few that are, like $100 million a year in annual sales. I mean, we're not coming in and saving a firm, right? They're eligible, they get in. What we're doing is they're like, oh, well, we'll start this project 6 months earlier now, right?
Yeah.
It's the firms that are, you never know what will happen, but some of them possibly could have gone out of business or just shut the doors or whatever. So if we can come in and make a difference, it helps. So those are the ones that I like getting in.
Well, we'll certainly be spreading the word.
Yeah, if you hear of any companies, just let me know. And again, we do have a travel budget. I've talked to companies who are like, yeah, I'm interested, but I'm not going to send information to somebody I don't know who's over the phone. So
Cool.
I'll
That's
fly
good
up
to know.
to North Idaho or drive over to Eastern Idaho if I need to. It's funny. Sometimes people will just send you any information you ask for, and sometimes it doesn't matter. Yeah. So, but we are flexible. I'm happy to go. I can do a lot of the application in person. Just show up with my computer and start pulling documents. It doesn't take very long. But yeah, I live here. I'd love to see more Idaho companies. We just seem to have a harder time pulling them across. So, but yeah, any referrals would be awesome.
Okay, thank you, everyone. If you would like to access this recording, contact us here at Commerce. There's Patrick's contact information if you want to reach out to him directly. And we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.